Hello, Jenny here. Today I want to talk to you about a really important subject, and that's the hospital that I went into for 6 weeks. The lead up to it, how daunting it was, how leaving my children and my husband at home and me going into a really new environment, and not only was it a bizarre, strange experience for me, but I'd never been away from home for that amount of time, not even when I was well, let alone being highly anxious and depressed. So that was really challenging. I'll apologise for this morning with looking sweaty. I've just been working out, and these videos that I do them just sort of last minute, so apologies for all the shine. Anyway, let's get into subject. It was I'd basically been battling anxiety and depression for 5 months, going through lockdown, and I talked to you in the last video about, you know, all the therapies that I had and the way that I'd try and bring my body and my mind back to balance. I was so physically exhausted, needing to get through the day, and every single day saying that tomorrow's going to be different. Tomorrow is going to be the day that I heal. And it went on like that for 5 months. And trust me, when you're in that situation where you're highly anxious and depressed, every day feels like a year. It's just, and then the polar opposite. So when life's good, you know, we often say, God, this year's gone so quick. And that tends to be because we've really felt that we're in a good place. So that the concept of time itself was very bizarre. But I want to just take you back to my feelings about pharmaceuticals and antidepressants, and any tablet really to treat disease. And I've never been a big fan, especially since when my dad, we found out he had cancer, that it really made me become ultra aware of the way that our world works. It was sort of taking the blinkers off and then realising that, companies want to make money from sick people, and I was up until that point I was really naive about the health of our nation and sort of the state of things. But anyway, that was really digging into the rabbit hole and finding out a lot of new facts. And I think before I went through my first experience, I started to become quite judgmental about people using things like antidepressants. You don't need to, you can treat things naturally. There's always another answer out there, not to pop a pill. And this was my lens, the new lens that I was looking through, and I wasn't veering off that vision. That was I wanted to go all holistic and real foods and all the rest of it, and that was great. That was something positive. I was learning and I was enjoying it, but I became quite judgmental, and I didn't realise I was, but over time I was. And when I went through the first experience, it kind of compounded the view that I had, because I started on antidepressants, and I took 2 different antidepressants in that initial period, and they didn't seem to work for me, or it was a partial relief. I was only on the antidepressants for 6 weeks, and then I'd sort of take myself off cold turkey. This was like, nearly 4 years ago now. And that's when I found TMS. And so I wasn't on any tablets, or, I wasn't treating it with any other way. So, and it compounded the feelings of, look, you can find these natural things, and you haven't got to go down the pharmaceutical route. And it sort of reiterated, my views and my thoughts about natural. And I think I carried on being quite judgmental, and, not outwardly saying it to hurt anyone, but, really wanting to build a company where I was going to educate people about, all these natural things, that they didn't need to go to the doctor to get pharmaceuticals, and, and then going through the second experience, as I said, I tried so many natural things, new things, and I learned in the end that it was needing to sit there in the anxiety and not try and change it and chase after fixing myself. But at the time, things weren't working, and I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do, and I started to have TMS again, the third round of TMS, because I thought that was the only thing that was going to sort of save me. And the doctor who was administering the TMS, I don't think he quite knew how severe my anxiety was. And again, this is a valid point, that when we break our leg, it's very evident, and it's we talk about it and we're open about it. But when your brain breaks, there's so many things that go on with the shame, and you're losing your family down, and so many negative feelings. Hence, that's all part of it. But he expressed to me that he didn't know that I was as severely anxious as I was, and he advised me that he didn't think the TMS was appropriate at this time, and he then advised me to maybe go into hospital to have a break. Him saying that to me, why don't you go into hospital? I think it'd be beneficial for you. It was just like someone stabbed me in the heart. The anxiety went through the roof. My initial response was, why would I possibly want to go into a mental institute? I had this vision of sort of, me being in a straitjacket and in a padded cell, the kind of old-fashioned way we think about these things. I mean, I'm laughing now because it really is nothing like that at all, which I know now. But it really, and I kind of had this sort of thought process that I'd probably be doped up, and I think my husband felt that as well. You're doped up, and then you kind of sort of not really with it, and so I left. He told me he didn't want me to have the TMS, that I've had so much of it that if it hasn't worked by now, it wouldn't work. And I went away on that afternoon thinking, there's nothing I'm done for, there's nothing that's going to help me now, I don't want to sort of be on pharmaceuticals, which I had started taking tablets at that point, probably 2 months before then. There was a couple of tablets, antidepressants that I'd taken, and hadn't been the right ones for me. So, going to the doctor, you try one, try another one. And they weren't really giving me any relief. So on that day, my mindset was, I've tried this, and I could reel off, probably about 12 things that I'd tried, and you know, I haven't got the energy to fight anymore. I'm done, you know. And I was suicidal through the whole 5 months. I'd been suicidal. It was just, the anxiety was through the roof, and it was just awful. But anyway, so I think driving back, I sort of started to come around to saying, you know, I've tried everything else, and the only thing I haven't tried is going into hospital. I know it's going to be awful, but it's what I've got to go through to have any sort of life. Because if I didn't go in the hospital at that point, my thoughts were that I would do some serious harm to myself, and or you know, I wouldn't be here anymore. And so I told my mum as we got into the house that, Mum, I want to go in the hospital, and I think that's the right thing to do. My mum, I think, had already thought that it was the right thing to do, because I think she realised that I really needed to have a break. And so she got onto the phone to the doctor we'd been talking to, and he then liaisoned with the hospital, and there was a bed available on that day, and they told me to come in at 8 o'clock in the evening. It was so bizarre, and the children getting my stuff ready, and packing my bags. Like, what do you pack your bags to take to a mental hospital? It's like, you know, I mean, I'd only been used to going on holiday, or, you know, stuff like that. So what do I take? I just kind of shoved a few things in the bag, and the girls gave me a teddy bear and wrote something for me, and it was so sweet. You know, we tried to keep it as nice as possible for the girls, and the fact that Mum was going into the hospital, but it's for Mummy to get well, which we've been trying to tell them all the way through this. You know, you don't want their little minds to be disturbed. So anyway, I got there at about 8 o'clock in the evening. A bed was available. I was so scared. It was just so daunting. But strangely enough, when I was anxious, I would sort of shake, and it was quite visible. But I felt this sense of, I was really scared, but almost calm. Like, you know, I'd resigned myself to this, and that was what I needed to do. Anyway, the first night was really daunting, because my anxiety predominantly was towards sleep. I just thought, oh, you know, what's going to happen? How is it going to be? How could I possibly sleep in a new surroundings? And, you know, there was so many things going through my mind. I didn't have a very good sleep on that night. There were things like the benzodiazepines were offered, which I had. I slept a little bit, but then the next day, you know, talking, I was introduced to the other patients, and it was quite evident that there was a mixture of different people in the hospital. There were people with schizophrenia and bipolar and personality disorders, and there was also people who were in there for PTSD, you know, like being abused by their partners, or, you know, with my situation, sort of going through this experience, and then my brain holding on to the memories of it all. So there was a real mix of people in there. I won't mention names, but I will talk about a couple of my experiences in the early days of being in there. Obviously, going in there, you kind of want to, and being highly anxious, you don't want to disrupt the group. You know, they've been in there and I was the newbie. So I was trying to observe the way that they acted with each other and sort of mimic that. But I think because I'm big on communication, and it's ever so strange because even going through the trials and tribulations I have with mental health, I still want to communicate with people. I think I'm just naturally that way, that I love people and I gravitate to people, and I want to learn by other people's experiences. And so I would sort of try and talk to people, and people who I thought may be approachable or you know could advise me on the way I should be doing things. And I did have a couple of negative experiences in the first sort of 3 days. A lady who was a very big character in there, because she was very outspoken, and you know, she really let out her feelings, and if you upset her, you'd know about it. And I must have in this one occasion where she said to me she wanted to plait my hair, and of course, you know, I'd only been in there 2 days, and I said, oh yeah, that's fine, and I carried on watching the TV, and she then gets up out of her chair and she starts having a go at me, saying that she'd just read my mind, and that I'd called her an old hag. She then started shouting at me, and, you know, very aggressive, and saying that I was a disgrace to my children, I was a fake and a fraud, and I shouldn't be in there. And that was just so, I mean, ordinarily that would be not very nice anyway, but when you're anxious and depressed and anxious at that, you know, to that level, it was horrible, you know. And I sort of ran off crying, and it wasn't, I mean, I've experienced having an argument with people and stuff like that, but it's different when you're highly anxious in that way, because everything gives you a negative response and everything's quite painful, you know. So you try your hardest to escape from these negative feelings. So, you know, that was, and you kind of have to just take yourself away and really counsel yourself. You know, this is what I did a lot of the time in the hospital. The other experience I had which was probably the next day, was a younger girl in there. I think she was about 26. She would go out into the garden, and I would be in the garden working out, because that was the way that I sort of got through the early days, and, you know, well, through the duration of it really. But when I would feel anxious, I would go outside and work out, and it was kind of like the relief I needed. And this girl started sort of making a lot of noise, and I just assumed she was having a go at one of the members of staff. As it turns out, she was really couldn't handle the fact that I was working out, and she was telling everyone and being, you know, quite vocal about it. Was triggering her, because apparently she had an eating disorder, and she would vigorously work out, and that would be one of her sort of things that was quite a negative thing for her. But obviously for me, it wasn't. It was a positive way of, you know, working out the anxiety, and she would come out for a cigarette, and she would see me working out, and then, you know, really explode because of it. And you know, my instant reaction was, well, you know, I'm an ex-smoker. I used to smoke, and you're coming outside while I'm working out, and you're triggering me. But obviously, I didn't say that, but I thought it. And that was another weird scenario. It's almost like quite surreal. You think, well, how could you possibly get away with thinking that, you know. But apart from those two situations, it was such a positive experience for me. Once I'd got over the sort of initial newbie stage, I think my personality started shining through, and I was able to, when new patients would come in, I understood what it was like to come into the hospital for the first couple of days or week, and so I wanted to reassure people that it will be okay. You'll get the help that you need, and we're in here together. And that really helped me. I think just knowing that other people are going through the same struggles as you, and I love talking to some of the patients that were saying, you know, I came in like this, and often patients came in and they were having ECT, which is the convulsive therapy that we would have thought about years ago, and it was really helping them. And so all those, it was kind of like all the myths that I thought about a mental hospital, it was all shattered. I started sleeping better. It was really nice because at the back of the hospital was Sandwell Valley, and I would go, because I went into the hospital willingly, and I wasn't sectioned. Once the staff knew that they could trust me, I was able to come and go at will, and it felt almost like it was a woman's refuge. That's how it felt to me, where I was able to come and go, and then I started reading and really physically taking more care of myself, and that young girl went, so I was able to work outside in the garden, and it just really turned itself on its head. It was just such a positive experience for me. There were members of staff that were really sharp and not very caring, and it often made me question why would you have that sort of disposition and be, you know, helping people or claiming that you're helping people in a hospital. But then there were other members of staff who bend over backwards to help, and you know, were so kind and genuine. And really, so those people that win out for me. And when I got to a point where the doctor, I was a little bit reluctant. It's strange because some of the patients would say to me, as you go on your journey, you'll actually look at this as a comfort blanket. And I would at the start I thought, no, I don't think I'll be thinking that. But as I started healing and going on, the weeks going on, I really did. It was bizarre. It was like, you know, that was my safe haven. And the thought of then coming out, I assumed that I would feel the same way as I did before, because I'd be back in that environment. And the psychiatrist wanted me to come home, and we did it in little stages. So the first time I came home for a day, and then the next week I did 3 days, and it kind of like built up. I do need to talk to you about the antidepressants, because I changed the antidepressants I was on, and the doctor increased and gave me different ones. So I'll just go into that one in a second. But so the doctor, we did it in stages, and initially when I came back, I did feel like I was coming back into that environment, and I could feel the anxiety. Because it was namely my home that was giving me the anxiety, which is usually the opposite for people, but for me it was being in my home, and because it was all to do with sleep, it was my brain sort of holding on to those memories. And then as it progressed, and I sort of got used to being back at home again, and those feelings subsided. But so at this point, I'll tell you about the antidepressants. So I went in hospital, and I apologise if I made you viewers believe that I wasn't on antidepressants. It wasn't meant. I wasn't meant to, to avoid talking about that. It really changed my mind on taking antidepressants. I now understand, because of going through my own experience, that it's not an easy thing to do. Taking a pill, taking an antidepressant, it's not an easy way out. You still have to work on your views and your thought processes to change how you feel. There is a growing, there's a lot of growth that needs to go on, even with antidepressants. So I went in the hospital on 30 metazapine, and I think it was 30 citalopram. Is it citalopram? Yeah. And while my stay in there, the doctor put me on a quetiapine, and which is usually for bipolar, people with bipolar, because it acts as it sort of stops the highs and the lows, so it's supposed to keep people on a even keel. And even though I haven't got a personality disorder or bipolar, it helps with unipolar as well. Unipolar is when an individual becomes really depressed. So it put me on those, and I didn't have any effects from them, because you do always worry about the side effects. He decided to take me off citalopram. He didn't think it was working very well. He put me on in place of that, replacing that venlafaxine, and he also increased my metazapine to 45. And I really I am on a right, and I was then a right regime, really, and I don't do things by half. I've never took a pill for any ail, and when I do, I'm on 3, and that's just typical me. But I did find that that combination, as well as really saying kind, because I felt like being really kind to myself and talking to myself the way that I would talk to someone else. I think we're so critical of ourselves, and we would never dream about being so critical to others, but we find it so easy to beat ourselves up. And so I learned that lesson while I was in the hospital, that you have to be your own best friend. You have to be kind to yourself, and not be so judgmental of yourself. And so when I left the hospital, I left that Hallam Street Hospital with such lovely memories, really, of a place that helped me to heal, and all the lovely conversations that I had with staff members and patients. It was invaluable. I also, for the last 4 weeks of my stay, I started talking to a psychotherapist, and she was absolutely, I won't mention her name, I would like to, because she was just wonderful. But I'd paid privately for therapy and talking therapy, and she was just wonderful. You know, I would have paid privately for, but as it turns out, it was free while I was in the hospital. But it was like talking to myself. You know, she mirrored everything. She was so good. She wasn't judgy or telling me how to do things. She just mirrored back to me what I was saying, and being able to then look at it objectively, it really helps, because it made me see what I was doing, and how I was keeping the anxiety loop going, and it was just invaluable. So I came out after 6 weeks being in there, and I haven't looked back. Of course, I think we're always gonna have negative things in our day. We're always going to have challenges. This is everyone, not just someone who's gone through mental health. But I'm so optimistic about the future now, and doing these videos and doing my coaching course, which I'm going to do a video on. The next instalment is going to be about the antidepressants and go into detail about them, and also the nutrition that I take to offset any negativity from the antidepressants, because there are certain things that we do need to be aware of, which I'll go into detail about. I'm looking forward to that one. I did want to just finish as well with saying that I'm going to make this part 1 and part 2. In part 2, I want to do a podcast. Sorry to stop there. Amazon at the door. We can't leave Amazon standing. So yes, there was in the hospital, the bonding between the patients was wonderful. It really helped me, and there was a few ladies that I particularly got on very well with, and we had a giggle when we were in there. And I'm going to do another video in part 2 with a particular lady that we had some fun, and she's a very bubbly character, and we put our heads together on how we could use our entrepreneurial skills to put together our own business, and it was great, and this is what people do when they're in a hospital. We were healing, and we were also brainstorming, and so for us to just really shatter some of these myths about being in a hospital. So I'm going to leave it there today, another long-winded one. I plan on coming back for part 2, as I said, and any comments or again any topics that you feel would be very beneficial, I would love to cover. And thank you for listening again, and I'll see you in